place that once was, an Eden, unique in its formation, it is a sea within a sea, an ocean garden that has 7,500 miles of shoreline, and 5,000 islands, and 36,000 miles of ocean. Rich in nutrients from over 60 rivers mixed by cold water currents and tremendous tides, it's home to over 100 species of fish, 18 species of marine mammals, and an abundance of birds. There is a place that teems with life and was once one of the world's greatest fisheries. It is these fisheries that lured the first European settlers and established early America. It is a wonder, and there is nothing like it anywhere else, the Gulf of Maine. As my girls were growing older, I wanted them to learn about the ocean and the people that made their living from the sea. So we embarked on a week-long sailing journey to learn about the Gulf of Maine and the health of its fisheries, and to interview people who were interested in preserving the marine life and traditions of the area. To help us with the filming and recording, we had Alex Torres and Nico Danan join us. Right off the bat, they taught Georgiana and Noelle how to set up and use the various cameras and sound equipment. It was great to have such dedicated guys on board to help us get up to speed so quickly.
Well, I'm hoping that we'll be able to put together a good story to educate different people about the fishing industry in Maine and how it's changed. Like hearing Colin talk today, it sounds like it's affected a lot of, Maine's history.
As a child, sailing around North Haven, I'd recognize the ospreys, cormorants, and gulls. Sometimes I'd overhear an aunt or an uncle talk about puffins and how rare they were. To me, they became a mysterious, exotic bird, and as a child, one I was constantly on the lookout for. I'd see a raft of eider ducks and pretend that maybe I'd finally spotted the elusive puffin. Back then, I did not know that the puffins had been hunted by the early pioneers for food, and that settlers also shot them for feathers to use in pillows, mattresses, and for decorations on fancy hats. By 1900, there were only one pair of puffins living in Maine.
To get the puffins to eat their vitamins, they snuck the vitamins into the fish's mouth so that when they eat the fish, they eat the vitamin too. I know. We'll see. Can I keep reading? Yeah. Keep it in there. Oh, that's cute.
We were next headed to meet Dr. Stephen Kress, a widely respected ornithologist and seabird expert. Stephen is responsible for restoring the puffin colony to eastern Egg Rock in Maine. It is amazing to think that this one man's dream about species restoration could make such a difference. My uncle, Dr. Charlie Walcott, introduced me to Stephen Kress, as they were both professors at Cornell University.
And people want to participate, they want to learn what's going on. So this summer, for example, we have interns from 5 countries, United States, Canada, Japan, France, and Haiti. So it's a really diverse group, but they have in common this passion for birds. So if these students want to stay in field biology, this is how they'll find out. We have some decoys out here, and the decoys were put up to attract the first returning puffins and razorbills. And those decoys fooled the first returning birds to think other birds were already here because they don't like to sit by themselves. They're more vulnerable to predators if they're by themselves. So
We still have obviously some decoys still in there.
So be careful. The decoys have 1 leg, and the real puffin has 2, usually. This summer we have 18 interns that are living on the islands, doing the bird protection work, doing some of the studies that I've been talking about, and protecting them from human disturbance and predators on the islands. And those 18 interns are college-age students who are hoping to make a career in conservation biology. And I had been out to puffin nesting islands in Canada, saw what really remarkable places they were. And when I came to work at the Audubon camp on Hog Island in 1969, I came out to these islands and saw that, learned there used to be puffin nesting islands, and thought what a loss that is, that we can't enjoy them anymore, and that I knew that people caused them to disappear, and thought, well, maybe people should try to bring them back. And I think if I hadn't seen puffin colonies previously, I might not have understood that as well. I didn't know that it would take decades, but I didn't know it would take 8 years before the first one would nest. The idea was to bring birds back that had disappeared from feather hunting 100 years ago. That's why the Gulf of Maine population is meat hunting, egging, and feather hunting. And what was known was that young puffins usually come home when they're about to breed on the same island where they hatched. And so I reasoned that if I collected puffin chicks and brought them from Newfoundland to here, reared them and then released them, that they would hopefully come back here rather than going back to Newfoundland. Yeah. When we started the project on the island, there were about 60 pairs of great black-backed gulls, and that was it on the island. And before we could start moving puffin chicks from Newfoundland to raise and release on the island, we had to chase off the gulls. And it's true that puffins often do nest within, sort of embedded inside of a large tern colony. And one analogy is the terns are like a protective umbrella hanging over the puffins, because a predator such as a hawk or eagle flying in would be chased by the terns, and it would then fly away and the puffins would be fine, and so would the other terns. And that works to a large degree. It took 4 years before we saw the first one. I happened to be the first out there when the first one came back, which was tremendously exciting. And the interns then stayed and saw more and more come back. And it wasn't until 8 years that we were out there and we saw the first one come back with fish. But all the observations now happen by interns who live on the islands.
On the island, Georgiana and Noelle were in charge of much of the audio recording and filming. Noelle found out right away about her earphone magnification as she was recording a noisy, laughing gull chick.
He got tangled up in the vegetation. That's why. And now he's saying, "Let me go, so I will."
Oh, get the decoy, G. G. All the ones on that rock, and then all the ones over there. On the rock. Just I got them landing.
Eventually, the girls did a great job and shot some wonderful footage.
Over the course of the day, we learned a lot about puffins from Dr. Kress. We learned that puffins are open ocean birds, which means they spend most of their lives on the water. As a result, they are amazing divers, using their wings to propel them underwater as if they were flying. They can dive over 100 feet looking for fish, which they trap and hold in their beaks. In fact, they can hold many fish in their beaks at the same time. And though they are very social birds, they are prepared for living on the sea with their waterproof feathers and their ability to drink salt water. They are also excellent flyers and can fly up to 55 miles per hour. Puffins return to their nesting island to raise their chicks. A female puffin will lay a single egg in a burrow or rock crevice, usually the same one she has used before. Puffin parents spend a lot of time guarding their burrows, which is a high-quality real estate. Both parents bring back fish for their chicks until it is grown ready to leave, where one night in August the chick hops into the water by itself and goes. It is actually safer for the young puffin on the water than it is on land. This little puffin will not be back on land for 2 or 3 years. Many young puffins do not make it back, but the ones that do can live up to be 30 years old. Though no one really knows how this happens, puffins eventually find their way back home to the island and raise chicks of their own. I have a question. What role does the puffin play in the environment? Like, we were talking earlier about keystone species in environments, but when the puffin was reintroduced, what other animals and the habitat, how did that change once they were reintroduced?
We can be sure that something is affected. Certainly the gulls have less to feed on, but the gulls are adaptable and they feed. So it isn't so much about food as it is about, I think, about protecting the whole diversity of life on Earth. I mean, I think the job we're doing out here, and one of the reasons we do it, is because we believe no species should be lost, and that people can not only extinguish species, people can restore species, and we can not just cause species range to contract, but we can cause ranges to expand. This is what restoration is all about. This is what persistence and optimism are good qualities, I think, and in this project they were necessary, and that's what I tell all my interns, is that if you start a project like this, go into it for the long run. Don't just start it and quit, because the rewards are years or decades down the way. And for me, it's, that's exactly what's happened here. The rewards are all around us.
I came away from our journey wondering about the health of our oceans. Yet the ocean presents something of a dilemma. Even though the surface of the ocean looks similar year after year, tremendous changes can be occurring below the surface. These changes can be subtle at first and difficult to detect. When it comes to fisheries, the changes can be dramatic. And if a species is depleted, recovery is extremely difficult. And in the case of the puffins, takes decades to even begin to reestablish themselves. I hope a new ocean ethic develops that involves collaborative and community-based solutions where whole ecosystems are taken into consideration. I've always loved that the ocean appears vast, untamed, and free, though I now realize the ocean's resiliency has limits. The ocean and the life within it are vulnerable and need our stewardship and protection more than ever.